Never, and I mean never, buy Akara from a stranger at night. Especially if she is smiling too much. Especially if her oil never finishes. And especially if she only appears when it rains. Somewhere in Lagos, there is a small street near an old bus stop where, till today, nobody sells or buys Akara after 9 o'clock at night. The elders there won't explain why to outsiders. The younger ones who ask are simply told, "Ask your mother." But if you sit long enough with the right person, and you buy them enough tea, they will tell you what really happened. A story about a woman named Mama Tobi, an Akara seller who kept her street safe for 15 years. Until the night, something else decided to sell Akara too. My name is Aya Efe. I have owned the provision shop directly across from Mama Tobi's stand for almost 20 years, and I watched every single day of this story unfold from my own counter. What I saw that rainy season is the reason nobody on our street buys Akara from a stranger after 9 o'clock anymore. Let me tell you what happened. Mama Tobi had sold Akara at that junction for 15 years before any of this happened. She wasn't just the Akara woman to us. She was an institution. Her stand opened at exactly 6:15 every evening, and I could set my own watch by her. Secondary school children knew she'd slip in an extra piece for strength, without adding it to the bill. Okada riders ate 2 or 3 balls standing up before heading back into traffic. Even the landlords sent their drivers to go and buy from the woman by the junction, because everyone agreed, nobody fried Akara like Mama Tobi. But what really made her different was that she remembered people. She remembered which child was struggling with WAEC and asked about it every evening until results came out. She kept a small dish of unsalted, unsugared Akara aside, without ever being asked, for the diabetic woman 2 houses from my shop. None of us, not her, not me, not the children, not the Okada men, had the slightest idea that 15 years of quiet trust was about to be tested by something that didn't eat, didn't sleep, and wasn't interested in her customers' money at all. The rainy season that year came in harder than any of us remembered. For 3 nights straight it hammered without pause, and for 3 nights straight Mama Tobi did not come out. Too much rain, too much wahala, she told me across the road. On the 4th night, the rain came back even heavier, and this time, the junction was not empty. Baba Isa, one of our regular Okada riders, swears he rode past that exact spot at 8:40 p.m. and saw nothing but wet ground. He rode past again at 8:52 p.m., barely 12 minutes later, and there she was, smoke already rising from a wide black pan, a woman standing calm and dry despite the pouring rain, as though an invisible roof hung specifically over her. She was young, or looked young, smooth-skinned in a way that made the older women on our street instinctively curious rather than suspicious, the kind of face that makes strangers feel like old friends within minutes. Her head wrap was tied in a pattern none of us recognized. Her Akara balls were noticeably larger than Mama Tobi's, a deep, impossible gold, and she sold 6 balls for what Mama Tobi charged for 3. But it wasn't just the price that pulled people in, it was her. She had a joke for everyone. She called every single customer by some flattering nickname within their first visit. My chief, my senator, the finest woman on this street, and somehow made each person feel it was true. When a mechanic haggled her down by 10 naira, just for the fun of it, she threw her head back and laughed so loudly the whole junction turned to look. Ho-ha, my brother, 6 Akara and you are still pricing me. Lagos people, God will bless you, Shah. Take, before I change my mind. Children adored her. She pressed extra Akara into small hands for growing bones, and remembered, without fail, whose birthday was coming, whose mother had just given birth, whose football team had won the weekend before. Within days, half the street had a nickname from her, a joke shared with her, a small kindness they could point to. She wasn't hiding in shadows or whispering. She was, by any honest measure, the most charming person to set foot on that junction in years. The first person to buy from her was Comfort, the night shift nurse who passed the junction every evening. In a hurry, soaked through, she bought 6 balls, ate 2 on the walk to work,
and thought nothing of it. By the following week, word had spread faster than the rain itself.
There's a new Akara woman by the junction now. Her own is bigger, sweeter, cheaper. Come and see. I noticed the shift myself from my counter. People who had crossed straight to Mama Tobi for 15 years now paused at the road and crossed to the new stand instead. None of us thought much of it. Sellers have slow weeks. I told myself this too, and had no idea that every person crossing that road was about to give away something they'd spend the rest of this story trying to get back. I need to tell you about someone else now, because without her, none of what follows makes sense. Nobody on our street knew her real name. She had appeared years earlier from nowhere anyone could trace, sleeping behind the disused kiosk near the bus stop, wrapped in so many layers of cloth that even in dry season heat, she looked twice her actual size. We called her Madame Ojo, Madame Rain, because for as long as anyone could remember, she only ever seemed to fully wake up, fully speak, fully warn people on the days it rained. For years, her rainy day warnings were about nothing anybody could verify. The name had become half affectionate, half joke. Madame Ojo, forever warning us about things that never quite arrived the way she said they would. The first day the stranger's stall appeared, Madame Ojo stood across the road for nearly an hour, just staring, not saying a word. Unusual for her. By the third day, she was standing directly beside the new stall, close enough that two customers quietly stepped aside. The stranger noticed her immediately and greeted her the way she greeted everyone, with warmth, with theater. My future queen, she called out, arms wide, laughing. Even you have come to taste the sweetest thing on this street. Madame Ojo pointed at the pan, then pointed at the stranger, then said, clearly, in a voice steadier than any of us had heard from her in years, I know you, not from here, from somewhere else. I know what you are. The stranger blinked, just once, and laughed her big, warm, reassuring laugh. You have seen Akara before? My sister, this is Lagos. Everybody has seen Akara. Come, let me give you a taste, free, on the house. I am not talking about the Akara, Madame Ojo said, and walked away. I was watching from my counter, the only one who caught it. Something crossed the stranger's face for just a fraction of a second. A tightening. Gone before anyone else noticed. I told myself I'd imagined it. After that, Madame Ojo began her campaign properly. Every evening the rain started. She appeared at the junction and followed the smoke back to its source, calling out in a voice that carried 3 streets over. People of this street, do not let that oil touch your tongue. Something was spoken into it. I have seen this before, and I am telling you, do not eat. And here is the part I am most ashamed of, looking back. We laughed. It became the evening's entertainment. The stranger, sharp as she was charming, learned to time her responses perfectly. This woman says something was added to my oil. She'd announced to whoever was gathered, hands on her hips. She is correct. I add pepper. I add love. If pepper and love frighten you, please go back to your village. The crowd would roar. Children began imitating Madame Ojo's voice, tangling their own wrappers around their feet, nearly falling and never quite falling, exactly like she did. Even I laughed, more than once, from my own counter. God forgive me, even I laughed. Madame Ojo never laughed back. She looked, each evening, like someone who had already seen how this story ends, and was simply waiting, with a patience the rest of us didn't deserve, for the rest of us to catch up. While we were laughing at Madame Ojo, small things had already started going wrong, and none of us had connected them yet. Gao! Comfort, the nurse, began having the same dream every night, standing over an enormous pot of endless bubbling oil, her own hands frying, though she never remembered choosing to be there. She woke at exactly 3 a.m., every night, smelling of groundnut oil, though she hadn't cooked in days. I just lost myself small, Comfort started saying, more and more, never once noticing how literally true it was becoming. Baba Isa, the Okada man, had eaten Mama Tobi's akara nearly every evening for 6 years before switching. Within 2 weeks, his regular passengers noticed him forgetting routes he'd ridden for years. One rainy night, a young banker who rode with him every work night said Baba Isa stopped dead in the middle of the road, engine running, and stared at nothing for almost a full minute before saying only, "I was hungry," suddenly, very hungry, and continuing on as if nothing had happened. Iya Bimbo, the landlord's wife, sent her house help to buy, just to taste am. That same night her husband woke at 3 a.m. to find her standing perfectly still in their dark kitchen, eyes open, not responding when he called her name, until, all at once, she blinked and asked why she was standing there, with no memory of having left the bedroom. Edochie, a quiet 15-year-old boy, refused his mother's cooking entirely. "I only want the akara from the junction," he told her, again and again. She assumed teenage stubbornness, until he kept losing weight, despite eating the stranger's akara daily. Then came the night she found him talking in his sleep, in a voice that was not his own. Deep, slow, measured in a rhythm no 15-year-old speaks in. She recorded it on her phone, shaking, and when she played it back the next morning, neither of us could make out clear words, only a steady, patient cadence, like something counting. By the 4th week, sitting where I sat every day, watching the whole street pass in front of me, the pattern was impossible to miss. Everyone crossing that road regularly was slowly losing small pieces of themselves. A route, a name, a full night's sleep, an appetite for the food that had once been comfort itself. Meanwhile, the woman at the pan only grew more radiant each week. And through every single one of these weeks, through comfort's dreams, Baba Isa's forgotten roots, Iya Bimbo's frozen kitchen, Kelechi's borrowed voice, one person on our street had been screaming the truth at the top of her lungs. Nobody was listening, because the person screaming was Madame Ojo. It was Mama Caro, the woman who did alterations 2 doors from my shop, steady as an old tree, not a gossip, not dramatic, who finally said something out loud that made me stop laughing. She came to my counter one evening and told me she'd been buying from the new store for a month, small, and that lately she'd been cutting fabric in the wrong direction, sewing patterns backwards, forgetting measurements she'd taken that same morning. "I am not this woman," she told me. "I have been sewing for 15 years, my hands no cloth, but it is like something is coming between my knowledge and my hands." I told Mama Tobi everything that evening, across the road, in a voice low enough that no one else would hear. She listened without interrupting once. "I noticed my own customers thinning out," she finally said. "I told myself it was normal. But nothing about that woman has ever felt normal to me." She began watching, quietly, from her own shuttered stall, after closing, across several nights. On the first night, she watched the exact moment the rain began, and at that same moment, smoke began rising across the road. No cart wheeled in, no woman arriving with a laden tray. One moment, wet, empty ground. The next, fire, pan, smoke, the stranger already standing there, already smiling. On the second night, she watched the shadows instead. Every ordinary shadow lengthened and shortened as people moved. The stranger's shadow lagged, just slightly, and when she went still after handing a customer their wrap, her shadow kept moving a half-second longer before snapping back into place. On the third night, she counted scoops from a distance, 10, 20, 40, past 60, and the oil in that pan had not dropped by a centimeter, had not needed a single top-up, had not darkened the way frying oil always darkens with use. That, Mama Tobi told me, was not oil bought from any market in Lagos. On the fourth night, she leaned forward too far, trying to see the oil's color clearly, and across the rain, the stranger's head turned. Not toward the road, directly toward the shadow where Mama Tobi sat hidden. Their eyes met, and the stranger's smile widened slowly, far beyond what any face should comfortably do, as if to say, "I know you've been watching. Watch all you like." Mama Tobi didn't sleep that night. Before sunrise, she was already dressed, walking toward the bus park, to find the one woman on our street old enough and wise enough in the old ways to explain what she'd truly seen, her own aunt, Iya Agba, who'd come to Lagos decades earlier from Ozokwor. Mama Tobi told her aunt everything, and Iya Agba listened without interrupting once. When Mama Tobi finished, the old woman sat in silence for a long, uncomfortable stretch before finally speaking. "There are certain spirits," she said, "that do not need to steal a body outright, the way church stories warn about. They are patient. They only need what a person has not yet given away to anyone else. The first hunger of the morning, the last thought before sleep, the small, ordinary pieces of a life nobody thinks to guard. Who guards a piece of hunger? Who watches over a route they've ridden 1,000 times?" She leaned forward. "When you buy from a stranger at night, without asking questions, without discernment, you open a door you didn't know was there. It does not take everything at once. That is why nobody notices in time. It takes only what a person can afford to lose, a little sleep here, a little memory there, until one day they discover they have lost far more than they ever knew they had. That is why the boy speaks in another voice while he sleeps. I will not tell you exactly what that voice is, or where it has gone to borrow itself from. Some doors, once you understand fully what is behind them, are harder to close. It is enough for you to know this. Whatever she is collecting, she does not intend to give it back." Iya Agba's eyes narrowed, and the fact that she looked at you, that she smiled knowing you were hidden, means something has already changed. She knows your face now, the same way, in reverse, you nearly know hers. You have already been seen. She rose, moved to an old wooden trunk, and laid items on the table one by one. A small calabash, a folded white cloth, 7 cowrie shells, a twist of coarse salt wrapped in leaf. "I will teach you what my own grandmother taught me. Not to fight her. You are not strong enough for that, and neither, if I am honest, am I anymore. But to close the door she has opened and send her back through it before she takes root here permanently." Iya Agba's instructions were precise. Wear white, unadorned. Tie the calabash of salt at the waist. Carry 7 cowrie shells in the closed right fist. Approach only once the rain has properly started. Do not run. Do not shout. Do not accept anything offered, no matter what shape it takes. On the 4th night after, the rain came harder than it had in weeks. Mama Tobi dressed exactly as instructed and crossed the flooding road toward the stall that had haunted our street for nearly 6 weeks. Up close, for the first time, she could finally see what every mind on our street had been sliding away from. The stranger's smile held a fraction too long, like a photograph of a smile, rather than a living one. Her eyes, when the streetlight caught them, showed no reflection at all. "Ah, Mama Tobi," the stranger said, honey smooth, unbothered by the storm. "You have finally come to taste my Akara? Everyone says yours cannot compare anymore." "I have not come to eat," Mama Tobi said, fist closed tight around the cowries. "I have come to ask you one question. What is it you are frying in that pot?" The smile didn't break, but something shifted behind her eyes. "The same thing every woman on this road fries. Mama, beans, oil, fire. Nothing more." "Then explain why the level has not moved once in 6 weeks, why it never needs a top-up, why it never darkens, no matter how many hundreds of balls you scoop from it." For the first time since her arrival, the stranger went quiet. The rain seemed to grow louder in the silence between them. "You should not have counted," she said at last, her voice layered now, 2 voices riding slightly out of time with each other. "Counting is its own kind of watching, Mama. Watching is its own kind of knowing, and knowing is dangerous for a woman your age to carry. I am not afraid of you," Mama Tobi said, though her voice trembled on the final word. "You should be." For just a moment, the pleasant mask dropped entirely. The face beneath it, neither young nor old, simply hungry, in a way that had nothing to do with food. But fear was never the point. Hunger was always the point. "Everyone on this street has been hungry for something they couldn't name. I only offered to feed that. Nobody forced a single mouth open, Mama. They walked to me every time. Mama Tobi opened her fist and threw all 7 cowrie shells into the boiling oil. The pot screamed, not hissed, screamed, like 100 distant voices trapped inside finally finding a way out. And for one blinding second, the flame beneath the pan roared blue. The stranger staggered backward, her too long shadow tearing itself away from her feet and thrashing against the compound wall. Mama Tobi turned and walked, not ran, walked, exactly as instructed, straight back across the road without once looking behind her, even as the screaming rose and rose behind her before cutting sharply into silence. By the time she reached her own stall and turned around, the fire across the road was gone. The pot was gone. The entire stall, wooden stand, buckets, bench, gone, as though none of it had ever existed on that patch of ground at all. I went looking for Madame Ojo the very next morning, because for the first time in years, I actually wanted to hear what she had to say. I found her sitting near the disused kiosk as usual, calmer than I'd ever seen her, watching the empty patch of ground across from Mama Tobi's stall like she already knew what had happened there the night before. "You knew," I said, sitting beside her, ashamed of every evening I'd laughed along with the crowd. She nodded slowly. "I have seen her before. Not here. Another street, years ago. Another city before that. She does not have one name. She takes whatever shape the hunger of a street requires. Sometimes zobo, sometimes suya. Once, roasted corn near Ibadan. She finds a street that trusts easily, and she feeds on what trust leaves behind when it's not being watched carefully." "Why didn't anyone believe you?" Madame Ojo looked at me for a long moment. There was no bitterness in her face, only a tiredness, too specific for a woman people had long since decided was simply confused. "Because I did not look like someone worth believing. It is easier to laugh at a woman in torn cloth than to sit with what she is telling you. It has always been easier." I had no answer for that. None of us did. The next morning, before opening my shop, I walked the street with Mama Tobi, and together we went from house to house. We sat with comfort and made her drink hot pepper soup slowly until sweat broke across her forehead and something in her posture loosened. "Do you still dream of the oil?" Mama Tobi asked. Comfort thought carefully. "Small, but it's fading, like waking up and forgetting a film watched too late at night." We sat with Baba Isa and made him recite, out loud, every major route he'd ridden for 6 years, until the hesitation left his voice entirely. We sat with Iya Bimbo, who wept when she finally understood how close she had come to wandering, one final time, into her own kitchen, and never fully returning. Then Mama Tobi sat longest with Kelechi. She simply cooked her own akara, right there in his mother's kitchen, and fed him slowly, one piece at a time, asking small, ordinary questions between each bite. His best friend's name, his favorite football club, the song stuck in his head that morning. By the 3rd piece he cried, though he couldn't say why. By the 5th, he asked for a second helping of his mother's stew, real stew, cooked at home, for the first time in nearly a month. That night, and every rainy night after, Mama Tobi returned to her stall and did something she had never once done in 15 years. She called out to every customer by name as they approached, asked after their families before they'd finished ordering, waited for a genuine laugh before ever handing over the wrap. Slowly, the street returned to what it had always been. Not because her Akara had gotten cheaper, but because being properly seen, being genuinely known, was the one thing the stranger's magic could never replicate. The junction across the road stayed empty for the rest of that season, and the one after. Madame Ojo, oddly, stayed too, though quieter now, no longer needing to shout to be heard. A few of the children who used to imitate her began, without any adult telling them to, leaving small things near the kiosk where she slept. So the next time you're walking home late through Lagos, and you pass a stranger selling something too good, too cheap, too perfect for that hour of the night, stop and ask yourself honestly, who exactly is she? Why is she only ever here after dark? And why, no matter how many people she serves, does she never once seem to run out? Because in this city, some things that look like ordinary food are not truly selling to fill your stomach at all. They are selling to quietly take something else from you instead. Your sleep, your memory, the sound of your own true voice. One small, golden, irresistible bite at a time. I have thought many times about what this story actually means. Not just the obvious warning, don't buy from strangers at night. What I keep returning to is this: we are not foolish people on our street. And still, the only person who saw clearly from the very first day was the one woman we had already decided, long before any of this began, was not worth listening to. There's an old saying, the one we push aside with our hands is the one whose voice we will not hear. She had been telling us the truth every rainy evening for weeks, in the loudest way she knew. When loud didn't work, someone finally listened, when it mattered. That is why, on our street, till today, nobody sells or buys Akara after 9 o'clock at night. It isn't written anywhere. Nobody voted on it. It's simply understood. The way you understand not to touch a pot still sitting on fire, even without anyone telling you twice. Never buy Akara from a stranger at night. And never assume the loudest warning is the least true one.